All right, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Chris Gambino. I am the Senior Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning Officer here at FAR. We are here to discuss our slate of 2026 program evaluations and talk through kind of some details about the program so you have a kind of high level understanding, as well as talk about some of the keys around submitting the request for proposal. For those of you who have joined these webinars before or have submitted requests for proposals for our evaluations in the past, this year things are slightly different. And so I want to make sure that we can articulate that. The RFP acknowledges that, but we're here to kind of host any questions that may come from that. I'm joined by my colleagues, Dr. Lakeisha Odom and Dr. John Wright. Nikki is not with us today, but I will be speaking on her behalf during that part of the presentation. We do have some logistics, so we're going to try and get through this within an hour, but we will be discussing three different opportunities. So we're going to maybe speak a little bit more quickly, but we are recording this. The recording, as soon as it comes down from Zoom, will be posted to the opportunity page on the FAR website. So keep an eye out for that. And we have kind of everyone muted right now, but we're going to utilize the Q&A function. Throughout the presentation, you're going to drop them in there. We have dedicated, as you'll see in a moment, some time to the Q&A function. And then what we're going to do essentially kind of moving forward is talk through, like, create space for that Q&A at the end. So please hold your questions, but put them in the chat, or sorry, not the chat, put them in the Q&A feature so that we can address them when the time comes. And we've got staff here to help us with that, Tianvo being the person who's going to help us navigate the Q&A. I mentioned the recording, and if you want to, you can kind of introduce yourself in the chat, and feel free to say hi to each other as well. All right, so we're going to move forward. We're going to talk a little about FAR for those of you who are unfamiliar with us, and then we'll talk about the programs that are available for evaluation, as well as some details about the scope of work for the evaluations. And then I'm going to provide some examples of outputs, some of the deliverables that we've seen in the past that we really like, so that everyone is kind of on the same page with some of the expectations we have and things we want to see at the end of the evaluations. I'll talk about some details regarding the proposals. Again, we'll talk about the difference between this year and past solicitations that we've had for evaluations. And then we'll kind of have one little piece where I'll show you where you can grab some resources on the FAR website. And hopefully we'll leave ample time for you to ask us some questions that I hope we can answer. Lakeisha, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thanks so much, Chris. And thank you, everyone, for your interest in these RFPs. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research for those that are less familiar. So, FAR was created in the 2014 Farm Bill, and we connect funders, researchers, farmers, all with the goal of pioneering the next frontier of agricultural innovation. The vision of our organization is a world in which pioneering, collaborative science provides every person access to affordable, nutritious food grown on thriving farms. And our mission is such that we build collaborative partnerships to support audacious science addressing today's food and agricultural challenges. Next slide. Thank you. So, the way in which we do this work is through innovative research that complements USDA's research agenda. We look for critical knowledge gaps. We are always seeking to increase public agriculture research investments. We focus on actionable science. We center farmers as we solve current challenges, and we look at research that moves from the lab and into the field, thereby increasing our impact. Since our inception in 2014, we have awarded over 450 uh, grants. We have about a 1 to 1.4 matching ratio with 550, over 550 distinct partnerships, and we've awarded around 836 million in our decade. The way that we do that is through a number of funding mechanisms. So we use public-private partnerships in order to advance food and ag research, but we have four funding mechanisms that enable that. We use competitive grants, prizes, direct awards, and consortia. You'll be evaluating a number of these if in the RFP if selected. I think we have one or two more slides. Within our research areas, we focus on what we call our priority areas, and that's cultivating thriving production systems, and that includes both crop and animal production systems, bolstering healthy food systems, which looks at not just food nutrition, also looks at food waste, food loss, access to food in communities. And my colleague John Reich will speak more about that program. Sustaining vibrant agroecosystems, which looks at soil, water, resilience in systems, and strengthening the scientific workforce, which looks at preparing future ag leaders in science and research careers. So I'm going to turn it back
Thank
over to
you.
Chris.
Thanks, Dr. Odom. All right, so let's get into what we have available here. And so we have three evaluations open, showcasing some of the really neat work that we do here at FAR. And we're excited to have you come in with the potential to let us learn more about these different programs. We have the Veterinary Student Research Fellowship program, we have the New Innovator in Food and Agriculture Research Award, and we have the Open Market Consortium, all three available for evaluation here in 2026. To talk a little bit about what our expectation is across these, you can see that we have these different types of assessment that we're looking for that are unique to each one of these open evaluations. There's more information about how we think about formative and summative evaluations and the assessment types. When you go to the open opportunity page, there's a link for kind of more FAQs on that, and you can click on that and see the document that kind of details this. But to quickly go over this, when we think about the formative aspect, we're really looking for kind of that process and implementation assessment where we want you to go in and kind of take all the resources you have available and assess the program management, the design, the governance, and the execution of the programs. That's that formative piece. And in return, we hope that you come back with some strengths and weaknesses and maybe some recommendations for improvement because we are looking and potentially in those cases to improve upon the way that program is functioning and kind of refine it for further use. In the summative case, and you can see all of these have that component regardless of which one of these evaluations you choose to submit for. In that case, we are really looking for you to go in and also bring an evaluation and assessment of those tangible results of the funded work. And what that could look like, essentially looking at helping us understand the innovations or the knowledge products that came out of that funding, assess what was achieved, the adoption or use of those things, those different outputs, maybe even some policy or practice influence, and the contributions really across the US as well as the global food and agricultural systems. Like Dr. Oda mentioned, each of these falls within a priority area. And so I just wanted to list these here so you have a better understanding of where they come from. You can see two of them are in that strengthening the scientific workforce priority area. And then the last one, the Open Market Consortium, is in that bolstering healthy food systems priority area. And I want to make a note here, we'll talk about a little bit more in detail later, but although NIA and the Vet Fellows program are both coming out of the same priority area, they have a slightly different expectations and desires when we talk about the evaluation itself and what we're after. And we'll talk about that in a moment. You can see here, just to give you a size of scale of these different programs or consortium, the total investment, and this is both FAR and match dollars that went into these different programs as of the start date to the time that we kind of posted this. And because of that investment, we see that there are about 92 veterinary fellows that were funded over the duration of this project from inception to now. There were 83 awards, NIA awards given from inception until now. And there was really just one kind of large open market consortium project that was funded throughout the duration of it. And so what you can see here is a comparison of when these programs started. Vet Fellows started in 2018. NIA we launched in 2016. And then the Open Market Consortium really ran from 2021 to 2024. And so what that kind of tells you is that by and large, the open market consortium is completed. And so we would hope that you could kind of look at the maturity of that work and see how that work has continued, what we've funded, and how it's being utilized in the world. Same with NIA. We have about 43 of those awards, those kind of projects we funded completed. And so assess kind of what are those innovations and those projects, how are they being engaged in the world because they're mature at this point, which tells you that the remainder of those are still ongoing. So there's quite a few ongoing funded projects in the NIA portfolio. And the Vet Fellows program, although it was incepted in 2018, we actually have it on pause right now for 2026 as we go through this evaluation to really better understand that program itself. And so your evaluation, your results are really going to be tangible and paramount to helping us understand if and how to move forward with that veterinary student research fellowship program. So we're really hoping that you can help us design and improve that program in some ways. As we move into each program description, again, I mentioned I'm going to be speaking on my colleague's behalf, Nikki, who is really instrumental, and you can see her here pictured with the veterinary fellows from 2025 at the Veterinary Scholar Symposium. Um, it essentially is looking to strengthen the veterinary research workforce pipeline. It really wants to provide opportunities for veterinary students with mentored research experience. And now, not just mentored research experience, but it wanted to expand that exposure to research in food and agriculture related programs and projects through interdisciplinary lens and approaches, ultimately trying to extend beyond that traditional biomedical science. And it does that in a couple of ways. One of the things it wanted to do is also foster professional development. And it did that through, as you can see here, helping these veterinary students kind of publish as well as present and disseminate their research findings with peers and other experts. When we talk about the program, giving you a little bit more detail to understand this program specifically, FFAR essentially partnered with the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges to establish this program. And we talked about when it got stood up. And the way that it really operates is kind of FFAR funds the programs that are distributed by AAVMC, and they kind of operate in that function as the distributor and the running of the program. Grantees are required to pair with a qualified mentor at any of these institutions, and details for this program and the others you'll hear about are on the FFAR website. And so you can see more of these details at the FFAR website. We're going to give you kind of a high overview of the programs. And then in lieu of, traditional reporting of this kind of the projects that the vet fellows are doing, they submit abstract and a presentation for that veterinary scholar symposium that you saw in the picture. And so each of those cohorts, each of those years comes together and presents the research projects that they did during their funding period. And lastly, while a lot of FFAR's programs bring in a match, this one in particular has matching funds being optional. And so when you go to evaluate, you'll notice that we either do or don't in some cases because of the ability for these to be optional. And then one of the key things that has happened over the years is through some iterative conversations with the fellows is FFAR actually moved to increase that stipend about. And so in 2025, grantees were awarded up to $16,000 towards their stipend, travel costs to get to the conference, and other research support costs. Now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Odom, to talk about the NIA award.
Thanks so much, Chris. So I'll share a little bit about the New Innovator in Food and Agriculture Research Award. But again, to reiterate Chris's point, you can find all this information and more details on the website. But the New Innovator Award was created to provide early investment so that we could launch early or young faculty into successful scientific careers. The main objectives of the program are to promote the career advancement of exceptionally talented and creatively early career faculty. The way that we do that is providing stability and funding during their researchers' critical early years by supporting investigators who demonstrate an inclination to question different paradigms and work with intellectual uncertainty. So we're often looking for innovative and kind of risk a bit more cutting edge and sometimes riskier research to invest in, something that is pushing that audaciousness that we value. And we tend to support highly creative and innovative research, and we highly encourage cross-disciplinary research teams. And the way we do that is we encourage our investigators to seek unique perspectives through participatory stakeholder research. Thank you. So, as we mentioned, we established this program to launch a promising career of scientists, early career scientists, whose research addresses significant food and ag challenges. These awards will then allow those grantees to focus exclusively on that research without the pressure of seeking additional funding. The awards are 36 months, and we award up to 450,000. The unique thing about our new innovator program is that we focus on a body of research, not specifically a project. So our new investigators are challenged to create a body of research for their proposal. So they're not asked to provide specific details. They provide those through the annual reports. And for this particular funding opportunity, the match is optional for this funding opportunity. And so the lack of matching funds will not affect the review of applicants for this opportunity. I'll turn it things back over to Chris.
Thanks, Dr. Odom. All right, we're going to pass it to Dr. Wright to talk about the open market consortium.
Great. So, as Chris has mentioned to you all, that this is the last program in this RFP that's open for evaluation. So, I want to quickly orient you all to why we thought this project was important, because it is a project. So it was important for us because we were interested at FAR in understanding how we can support regional food systems. And in this instance, it was specifically focused on the demand aspect of regional food systems. So our interest in this project was largely around how can we overcome barriers to procurement of institutional buyers from regional farmers. So we funded a pilot project called the Open Market Consortium, where we supported research to develop and pilot an open source digital marketplace framework for specialty crop producers. The aims of this project were one, to reduce market access barriers for small and mid-sized specialty crop producers, two, to improve traceability, transparency, and trust in specialty crop value chains, three, to develop and pilot an open source blockchain-enabled marketplace framework, four, to enable evaluation and monetization of differentiated specialty crop attributes, and five, to generate empirical evidence on producer and buyer willingness to participate in an open digital marketplace. So the design and implementation aspects of this. So like I mentioned, FAR funded this program as a bridge to look at gaps between institutional buyers seeking regional procurement of food and from small and mid-sized regional farmers. And we funded a group called Ag Launch to perform this activity. So they ran the project. And the project was called, as you know already, the Open Marketplace Consortium. It is a pilot project. And again, it was developed to develop an open source framework that utilizes blockchain technology to reduce barriers for small producers, specifically around specialty crops. Um, we initially provided funding of $2 million to fund the pilot program for an initial period of 36 months, and the program ran from 2021 to 2024. And the grantee was responsible for providing matching support. So they built a coalition of groups that they partnered with for matching support and thought leaders in the space at universities. They had a public sector and private sector groups. So they had federal government groups and they had a business from the public sector, and they had a group that was interested in institutional procurement.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's dive into some of the scope of work around the evaluation itself, and then in the Q&A, you can circle back and ask any more kind of details that you might want about the programs. Again, the RFP gives you information, and then FAR's website is the best source Our comms team does a great job putting all the information up there and talking about some projects that have gotten funded. So it's a really robust resource to use to understand the programs as you go into writing your proposals. So evaluation specifics. Each of these evaluations has some similarities as well as some nuance. So when we're looking at the veterinary student research fellowship, as I mentioned, one of the assessments on the formative side, we really want to understand the program design and implementation. We want to understand some features that you'll see within the RP, like fellow experience and their skill development. We want to understand some of the research outputs during the fellowship. And while we do want you to capture those and help us better understand those, this one is a little bit less about the innovativeness and the reach of those. If they exist, we want it captured, but we really want to understand the program from the process implementation side, and then the experiences and the mentorship. Again, because this is about early career trajectory. So did this experience kind of change the way that these veterinary students are thinking about the world, thinking about their career trajectory, getting them into and excited about food and agriculture related veterinary medicine or sciences? When we look at the NIA, similarly, we want to understand the program structure and implementation. That's really important in us, what we're doing to bolster and advance these early career scientists and faculty. But we do more so than the Vet Fellows evaluation, really want to understand the outputs of the research and the outcomes of the innovations, right? Again, to what Dr. Odom said, we funded, or the goal was to really find these kind of higher risk, really innovative, creative bodies of research. And so we want to know about the innovativeness, kind of where does it stand across the board? How does it compare and benchmark to other innovative funding programs and mechanisms? So we want to know about the research more. We want to know about the adoption of the research. Again, there are 43, I think I said, closed projects, meaning they're being completed. So what has happened since those projects completed? Is that innovation moved further into commercialization? Is it being tested further? Those are things we want to know. And then we do, because it is part of the strengthening scientific workforce priority area, we do want to understand the career impacts. We created this program to really make sure scientists, this research factually, could engage these questions without fear of like having to continually write more and more grants, but give them the space to do the research. And so, how did this unique program, this unique award, benefit these early scientists' careers, these faculty careers? When we look at the Open Marketplace Consortium, based on what Dr. Rice said, well, essentially we're looking at kind of what was developed. They look to kind of develop systems, marketplace technology. What did they go? What kind of track did they take? We want to understand their stakeholder engagement. They, in theory, are building a marketplace. So when a marketplace is getting built, there should be a lot of actors at play. Who did they engage? How did they engage across the 4 years that were funded? We want to understand early evidence of the market standing up. The pilot, was it successful? What did they find in the pilot? Again, it ended in 2024. How were the research that was invested in, how has it framed things moving forward, right? We're in 2026. There's been 2 years. How has it been used to help stand up similar marketplaces and that evidence being used? And then lessons, again, for future investments of similar types of consortia into the future. And when you look across these and you think about what we all said in terms of the programs, and you go read the programs, there's a section within the RFP that really notes for each of these evaluations some of the desired expertise. And we really hope you'll read that. But I think you can glean a little bit based on what we've discussed thus far about the type of expertise we want to come to the table. Obviously, evaluative expertise is important, but for the specifics, when you're thinking about the vet fellows, because it's a workforce program, think about bringing experience to the table that has evaluated workforce development or education or research training type programs. And also because it's focused on the veterinary sciences and understanding whether or not we stepped out of that traditional biomedical science space, bringing some technical breadth and depth of the veterinary sciences or animal health or public health related disciplines is going to be important as well. When we're talking about NIA, you can think about it again. It's a research investment portfolio. So making sure that your team that you're bringing to the table has done that, especially early stage or kind of investigator driven programs to showcase that you've got that expertise, that you've done that before, or understand how to do that. And then again, NIA's got a lot of breadth. So bringing food and agricultural research expertise is going to be really important. And there's so many different programs we funded. So there isn't one type of discipline that you need to bring to the table, like veterinary science or animal health, but across the board, make sure you've got that expertise. And then think again, because it is a workforce program, to have that knowledge about kind of workforce development. The open marketplace consortium is slightly different. You can tell. Make sure you have experience, come with experience evaluating research, but like pilot and demonstrating investments, like demonstration investments, be able to evaluate that. And then think about from a technical standpoint, there's institutional procurement of agricultural goods involved from a regional food system. So understanding all that will go into knowing what that means and being able to track to see if that was done well. And this is a data enabled platform. So coming and showing up with expertise in that type of space as well is going to be important. Again, all of that is showcased in the RFP, but wanted to make sure we are aware of it here. Okay, so what is your role? There's a couple things we need you to bring to the table. One is you're going to partner with us to define success. And so you'll see in the RFP, we give you a chance to look at the evaluation question, say, okay, what type of measures might you look at to collect to suggest that there was success in answering these evaluation questions? We'll end up early in the evaluative process working together to co-develop those measures. But you're going to come to the table and help us think about defining success based on those evaluation questions. What measures are you gonna seek to capture so that you can answer those evaluation questions? We really need you to help extend our capacity. In a lot of cases, we'll bring a ton of information to the table. You'll see that in a moment. But we do need you to help identify users of the innovations or knowledge products that came from some of the work when it's appropriate. Those next level users or end users of innovations. We need you to help collect and analyze historic project data. FFAR has 14 standard indicators that we use. And we're going to ask that the evaluators come to the table and help us collect some of that information that we have started to collect in annual reports, but hadn't necessarily collected in the past. And then demonstrate how the deliverables are influencing the value chain. That's a big one. And that comes to the outputs and the outcome side of the evaluations. Provide and bring economic expertise, again, where it's appropriate. We want people to show up and model the realized, if it's already happened, or prospective economic impacts of the innovations or knowledge products of some of the projects, not the programs as a whole, but the projects within the programs. Open Market Consortium could be one because it is a single umbrella project that maybe it is the consortium as a whole. But when we're looking at new innovators, you'd be creating exemplars from those 83 projects, picking a few of them to bring forward and do this economic modeling for us. We really want you to equip us with some actionable stuff. And so that's standalone public facing executive summary that we can post and show kind of as a third party and be transparent about it. And as well as thinking about some of the exemplar cases I just mentioned and bringing data visualizations to the table so that we can really highlight the work that has been done. And again, this is that audit part I talk about, almost you coming in and being this third party that really evaluates the work. And we're going to put some of that public facing to showcase really, what are we doing and are we doing it what we say we're supposed to be doing with that work? And that's kind of the value you bring. Now, what do we provide you? So our role is essentially we're going to provide you the essentials. So we're going to get you project details, proposals from the grantees when they came in, annual and final reports, high level budget information for the projects and the programs, as much of the contact information that we have for the match funders when they're appropriate, for the PIs of the projects, for the fellows, and any kind of next level or end users that we might have relationships with that are connected to the projects. Will provide that information. But again, part of your role is to help us find other stakeholders that we may not have and identify them. We're going to manage the collaboration. So we host you in this online platform. Those have worked with us know that we work within a Teams environment and kind of a private channel for each evaluation. And I think it streamlines data sharing, communication, and our coordination. So that's something we'll manage, and specifically I'll be managing. And then we really actively review a lot of the stuff. So we stay engaged, both from the science team, from my position, giving timely feedback. That's our goal here. Is you submit something to us, we already build out this time frame of the project. Within a week or 2 weeks, I turn it around with feedback, and we continue moving. And so we try to move at that pace where we work together iteratively in the process of the different drafts. Okay, this is a little bit newer context to just give some explanation, but from a data source perspective, we do expect that most folks do desk review of the project proposals, the reports, kind of all the information we give you up front. And then it's really, you'll see from a proposal perspective, you bring your method to us and help us understand what your method is, but we don't say if you have to do interviews or you have to do surveys. However you work best, put that in the proposal, but make sure it's clear that we understand how you're capturing the information. You will need to engage the PIs. I mean, that's an expectation of ours, is that you're going to reach out. In the case of the Vet Fellows program, those are going to be the fellows themselves and the mentors. In the case of NIA, and that's going to be the researchers. In the case of Open Market Consortium, that's going to be the researchers. Match partners, again, where that's appropriate. If there were match dollars that came in, that's someone we want you to engage. And then those other stakeholders. And then kind of another part is we expect you to do any kind of external database analyses that might be important to understand. And that's probably a little bit more specific to the Open Market Consortium in this case. And then lastly, kind of the synthesis, right? You can take these pieces of information together, of the different outputs and the evidence that are shared with you, and kind of put those pieces together, and that becomes another source. What we expect to see from you is essentially a standalone external facing executive summary. And that is something that we are going to put public facing on the website in the near future, and just kind of have it showcase that, like, this evaluation happened. Here are the evaluators. This is what they did, and this is what they found. The larger documents are going to stay in-house, and we're going to use those for internal learning. We expect kind of a functional data spreadsheet. What does that mean? You're going to compare, for the fellows, for the NIA, the different projects, the different awards across those set of measures and metrics that we co-develop. And we want to be able to kind of use the kind of cross tabs that work, and look across that work, and be able to move that work to really see and count the different ways that the data is showing us information. You are going to be responsible for preliminary findings presentations, and this is something that has been really successful of late, is kind of showcasing what you've got, how you're thinking of and interpreting the findings, and allowing FFAR staff members to kind of really engage and understand that, and kind of provide a little bit of feedback saying, yeah, this makes sense, or did you think about it this way, and how could we learn more about something over on this side that you may not have asked yet. And then we've got the reports. There's going to be, if there is a process implementation component, a specific final report to that. And so that's going to be both important for the Vet Fellows as well as NIA. And then there's process and implementation, or outcomes and outputs final report, and that's going to be across all three. And then lastly, there's the exemplar reports or exemplar cases, and those are spelled out in the RFP. Our goal is to have up to 4. but we don't want to make you say that there's going to be four in case there isn't enough mature projects within the different portfolios to be able to move toward four. And where appropriate, there's going to be economic analyses, and when that's not appropriate, more of a qualitative case study. And so those are the things we're hoping to get from you. I'm going to quickly run through some of the outputs we've gotten before that we've really liked. There's going to be 3 slides here, but you'll have access to this video so you can see these and go back to these. But I'm going to run through them pretty quickly to get us to the proposal parts. So first, when innovations or knowledge products are a part of it, so this is going to be a big one for NIA. This could even be captured within the Vet Fellows program evaluation. We'd like you to help us understand like how many innovations came out of this, how many came from each project, what are the types? Break them out for us. Was it practice focused? Was it a technology? Was it an approach? Things along those lines. Was it a diagnostic tool? Help us understand what the innovations were that came from the funding. FFAR has what we are currently calling stages of research development deployment. We have 10 of them. This slide got truncated to 9. But what we are going to need from the evaluator is really help capturing what did the PI think, and this is largely in the case for NIA as well as Open Market Consortium. What did the researcher think the innovation, the idea was? What stage was at, like at proposal? Then for you to do desk review and then maybe survey or interview the researcher to figure out, okay, where was the innovation at the completion of the project? And if the project completed, 3 years ago, when you're doing the evaluation this year, where is the innovation now? Did it continue to advance? Was there more funding that came in from a different source that moved the innovation? To really help us track this innovation commercialization pipeline. And we really hope that you come back with something like this that can show us the movement of the thought process and across this pipeline of the funded innovation. And your role is really to help us kind of validate what the PI says using your expertise in this space, and then help us kind of calculate the change over time, where it was from, how far did it move at completion from where it was at proposal. And then when appropriate, the kind of modeled economic cases that really help us have valid innovation adoption scenarios that come with potentially valid counterfactual scenarios, that you bring realistic price points, and model it over kind of a 10-year, 15-year time horizon. And again, this is when it's appropriate. In the case of the Vet Fellows program, this may be less appropriate. In the case of the innovations in NIA, this is probably really appropriate that for those projects, you can model this for us, especially those that are a little bit more mature. And we'd love to see you come back and show us kind of the modeled value of the innovation that got funded. All right, so some quick notes on the proposal itself, and then we should have about 15 or so minutes for the Q&A section. So key proposal sections, this is all in the RFP, but I want to help you understand the background experience that's, like we said, really important for your team to showcase that you bring the skills that are listed, the expertise that are listed in the RFP. If you don't have those in-house, we really advise that you kind of build a team. You bring in that external expertise, have an advisory council, something along those lines. Make sure the team has it, even if you don't have it in-house. And show us that you've done similar work before. Like, we really would love to see those examples. Approach, again, how are you going to collect the data? You don't have to do it any one way, but you need to let us understand how you're going to do it so we can just determine if that fits kind of what we think is appropriate. The types of data you're going to collect, and then how do those data you're collecting, again, give us an example of how they connect back to answering the valuation questions. And then lastly, the budget. We need to know, understand how much this project's costing from your perspective and how the funds are going to be used. In this kind of section, in these proposal sections, again, clearly showcase the measures or metrics that you might use for the evaluation questions. These are not set in stone. They just help us understand how you're thinking about it. And then again, when the project kicks off, we'll co-develop these together. We're not asking you to tell us how to measure success, just how you're thinking about it. What types of measures would you use? to connect to those evaluation questions that we're posing. And then make sure you provide links or at least like attach some pages in an appendix of previous work that's similar to the work we're asking. All right, this is the big section that is different from past years. Okay, this year we are submitting it and opening it as an umbrella, and you, as the evaluator, can submit for one proposal, two proposals, or all three of them. You have the option. And so what we're asking, if you do a single proposal, you submit a single standalone proposal that addresses the specific project scope and timeline and budget. This is going to look a lot like we've always had it in the last couple of years. If you come to us with a multiple submission, and again, this isn't exhaustive, the RFP talks a little bit more details about this. You'll submit a single document, but it's going to be an integrated proposal package for all of the evaluations you're proposing. And so we need to clearly understand which ones you are proposing to evaluate. And it should include separate work plans for each and narratives from the budget perspective. But then it should describe some of the efficiencies. It should describe kind of the shared evaluation frameworks, maybe dedicated sub teams, phase scheduling, things along those lines. And from our perspective, we do encourage teams to apply for more than one evaluation if you have the capacity and the expertise to do so. And again, there's much more details in the RFP itself. Okay, quickly to help you understand the programs themselves from a timeline perspective for the proposal, we're hoping that the Vet Fellows evaluation lasts about 7 months. We really do want to utilize the information in the potential iterative phase of reopening, right? It's closed for 2026. We want NIA will run probably about 11 months. And then see here that if you do apply for the open marketplace consortium evaluation, while we'll contract it with the rest of the contracted timeframes that you'll see in the RFP, we won't actually start working on it till later. We delayed the start, so we have a little bit staggered schedule here, but it's going to be a run about 11 months as well. When it comes to questions about costs, there are no matching funds required for evaluations. Okay, for the evaluations, you don't have to find matching funds. You submit us the budget, we review your proposal. FFAR does allow indirect costs for evaluations, but one note that we say on this point is that we do consider cost effectiveness in our funding decisions. So keep that in mind as you submit your budget for the work. And then when appropriate for data collection, we do fund travel, but in a lot of cases, this is mostly work happening virtually. And then the RFP mentions the budgets, and so each of these evaluations has a separate budget to be mindful of. All right, quickly detail-wise, so we can move on to Q&A. You're going to email to me with the subject line. This is all in the RFP as well, and it's going to be a single PDF. So again, a single PDF is coming to me, and I will acknowledge receipt when it comes through, and I will move it into our review folder, and we will get back to you as we move through the review process. All right, last piece of information is additional resources. I've mentioned the indicators. We have 14 of them. Indicator 14 is the one on those stages of research, development, deployment. When you go to the FFAR website, you go to the grants and funding page, you go to the kind of grantee resources, you then go to annual or final reporting resource, and that's where you can find the FFAR indicator handbook describing our 14 indicators in detail. And again, the 14th is the one on R&D. And true to my word, we have 15 minutes left for Q&A. Tien, I don't see any Q&A in the Q&A feature yet. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's currently no questions. Oh,
Okay.
it just popped up.
Yes, feel free to utilize this time to put your questions in, and we will work towards answering them. Tien, do you mind reading them out?
Yeah, of course. The first one says, thank you for this webinar and chance to ask questions. Are the page limits, particularly for the approach, description, and evaluation plan, the same regardless of how many projects one is proposing to evaluate?
That's a great question, and maybe a slight oversight. I think we do want, if you're coming with an integrated proposal for two evaluations, I think we're going to be a little bit more lenient on the page count. But our goal is really to get someone to submit a concise proposal, especially with the amount that we'll receive and our kind of bandwidth from a team perspective. So the more concise, the better. But we do recognize when if you're coming with an integrated proposal for more than one evaluation of more than one of these programs that are available, then that page count for the approach section it can be a little bit extended.
Okay, the next question is, are prior evaluations published? For example, the economic analysis you showed on screen.
The economic analyses are not published. We do have in our executive summaries of past evaluations, parts of those they are slated to. They have not made it on the website yet. We're kind of building out that impact side of the website. And so they should be there at some point in the future within those kind of standalone public facing executive summaries. But currently they are not published.
We have a question about the vet fellows. Have there been any surveying and or follow interviews with vet fellows?
That is a great question. I will probably default to my colleague Nikki, who is not here. So, Ken, I believe there's a way after the webinar, like we can send a mass email. And so we will answer that question in our follow-up to y'all uh, when Nikki has a chance to respond to that.
Sounds good. The next question is, can individuals submit proposals or does it need to be an LLC/company?
That is a great question. I think the way that we approach it is we have contracted through a 1099. I think from our perspective, we can contract with an individual. I would have to get back to you on kind of our implications from, I mean, all the tax implications are on your end. And so we have contracted with individuals in the past.
The next question is, what types of insights would be most valuable to FAR leadership in shaping future research investments?
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, you can see those in the evaluation questions from each of the programs. I am happy to hand the mic over to Dr. Odom and Dr. Reich about like what they think is valuable from what they want from their programs, if they're willing to speak on that. But in the evaluation questions, answering those are pulling, you can see some of the things that we really value to understand.
I'm happy
Um,
to share a little bit from New Innovators if that's okay. So I think that often what we want to understand are, to Chris's earlier points around like innovation and impact. So I think for me, understanding if there were a certain type of project that we funded that then led to like larger adopted innovation, that might be very interesting for me because then we could see whether or not we need to solicit or recruit more projects of that kind. I think for me also what is interesting is gaps. So if there is a space in the research landscape that we have not covered before, for example, that might be interesting because then we could figure out whether or not we want to intentionally recruit for that type of discipline. So if it looks like we've had a lot of animal science, but we haven't looked at a particular area in the supply chain that is important, right? And we could help define what we would consider important. But that would be interesting to me. Trends like that, I think, will be really informative because it helps us to understand what is potential, like where could we invest that we have not previously? What are some blind spots that we may not be seeing in the portfolio? Are there some recommended areas that we could pursue or prioritize? So for me, things like that would be really interesting.
Yeah, and similar to me, the impacts are going to be really important. and whether the project was able to meet the goals of why FFAR actually decided to fund that area, and what specific areas we or how we could be doing things differently to reach those impacts.
Okay. The next question is about vet fellows. So, given the smaller budget for the vet fellows evaluation, does FAR imagine the exemplars to be lighter versions than the other programs? And would this program include the more qualitative exemplars mentioned in this presentation?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think it's again, I think I mentioned maybe less appropriate here for the modeled economic benefit, and these would be more highlighting each exemplar highlighting a student's experience and a student's work. So more of the qualitative, yes. Lighter touch depends on how you want to define that, but yeah, would not consist of the robust economic modeling in my perspective.
Okay, next question is, for integrated proposals, would you prefer discrete past performance sections for each program?
Yeah, I think when it comes to highlighting the work that matches a program, just make it clear about which of the programs it's matching for us, so we can clearly see that you've done work in that space for for each of the types of evaluations or each of the programs that you're evaluating. So if it's Appendix A is, experiences from similar to one program, Appendix B similar to the other, or Link A and Link B, I think that is the best way to bring it forward so we can clearly see that.
Okay. If a firm were to propose more than one proposal, so an integrated proposal, would the firm only be considered for the group submission, or could the firm submit multiple but be chosen only for one?
Yeah, great question. We are currently entertaining the idea that if you submit for multiple and we think you're really strong in one case and someone else might be submitted a single one and really strong in the other case, that we've reserved, and I think it says this, I don't know the exact language in the RFP, kind of reserved the right to say like, yeah, we think you should move forward with this one. So to answer the question, you would be considered for both, but even if you are less strong in one, it may not diminish your ability to get a single contract with one of the proposals. So I think I answered the question is you submit multiple and you'll be considered for the efficiency and the effectiveness of that submission, but there is the potential that we contract you for one and not both.
Okay. The next question is there any specific requirement in terms of format or types of breakouts shown in the budget? For example, tax/direct versus overhead.
We currently, for evaluation side things, don't have a standard budget template. But we do want you to be able to showcase and show us like how budget is being utilized. So high level it works for us as long as we know kind of what percent is going to what you might call administrative fees or overhead, what dollar value is going to your personnel, things along those lines. But we don't have a standard budget template for evaluations at this point.
Okay, the next question, Lakeisha might want to take this one. It's how do you view success/ return on investment related to workforce development? So, for example, continued employment in a university, industry, company, etc.
So I'm happy to take it, but I think vet fellows might be a little bit different than new innovators. So for me, specific to new innovator, I think looking at continued employment because a portion of the goal of the program is to invest in early career researchers and retain them in academia, right? Because within the first 3 to 5 years is when a researcher might leave academia. And so a part of the design of this or the intention behind the design of this program is to retain that talent. I think though there could be other our successes. So for me, it could be, and we can design these together, but I'm just thinking about some things I find interesting around the program. So that could be something like how many of the researchers go on to collaborate and gain larger investments as a result of the investment in that initial program, right? So their early career. So this may be their larger grant to date. So after they receive a new innovator award, are they then encouraged to apply for larger grants and to receive those grants? And was that as a result of the research that was funded with this smaller investment in the new innovator program? That could be a great uh, metric of success, or something along the lines of do they then go on to do patents, or create startups, or do some other outside activity that are still using that research? So that could be a metric of success for me related to workforce. So I think we could design a number of them, but those are some of the ones that jump to mind initially.
Okay. Our next question is, could you share a list of presentation attendees to encourage collaboration on proposals?
We'll have to think about that internally to decide how I forget how we phrased it, but yeah, we'll think about it internally. I don't know that we're going to share everyone's email, but we might be able to jumpstart a conversation by having people email us that want to have their email shared. But I don't think we're just going to blast everyone's email out. We're going to keep that private for now. But we do encourage collaboration, so I'm happy to help facilitate it for sure.
Okay. The next couple of questions are about budget. So the first one is, are there any FAR events to factor into budgeting for any of the evaluations?
Um, I don't know. From the vet fellow's perspective, it's on pause. So I think we missed the window for the last symposium, but I can double check that. But that would have been something, you as the evaluator could show up to be able to speak to people and learn in that context. So that would be something you could budget for. I don't know if there's any, and Dr. Odom, feel free if there's any specific NIA event where NIA people come together. So it doesn't seem like it. So yeah, right now there's no specific FAR event, I would say, for that you would need to budget for in this case. But if in planning it came up, then we can talk about an amendment and things along those lines that to get you to those events.
The second budget question asks, do you need hourly rates included?
Um, we don't. We typically get them. If that's one of the ways you budget, then that's appropriate to share with us, but we don't require an hourly rate.
Okay. And the last budget question asks, when you said FAR funds travel for data collection, do you mean inside the stated budgets or separately?
Yeah, I think the first is probably where we're at. And again, that is very rare. It would be in the case of that earlier question about if there was a meeting and it felt really appropriate for you to be there to engage with some of those stakeholders, then that would be something we want you to consider to be at. Right now, off the top of my head, and based on what I saw from Lakeisha, it doesn't seem like there is those type of meetings coming up regarding these programs that we're evaluating. So it may be less appropriate to include travel in your budget for any of these three programs.
Looks like we're almost out of time. One of the last question is if folks can email you if they have further questions in developing their proposals, and the answer is yes. So
Dang, can't believe you just offered me up like that. There's one last one. What's this deliverable one?
Oh, okay. Do you want a deliverable that is more of a presentation deck for multiple audiences or a comprehensive academic analysis?
Oh, that's a great in terms of the proposal should be not a deck. When it comes to the deliverable, we do currently want report format, but the preliminary findings is a deck. And so you'll create a deck and you'll present the deck. But the truer deliverable is more report format.
Okay, I think that was the last one.
Great. Perfect timing. Thank you all for attending. Tien, thank you so much for organizing this, putting it all together. And then Michelle, Lakeisha, John, thank you for your participation, helping us make sure the slide deck was great and providing all that insight. Again, the FFAR website is the best. We've got the open opportunities page. Our comms colleague here will take this recording and put it there as well. So you'll have access to all of this. Do remember April 8th is the submission deadline. So keep that on your calendar and get those in, please. We're excited to review them.